The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the expressed written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
Station atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Here we go. It's Thursday, January 11th, Friday, January 12th if you're on the East Coast or across the pond, and this is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, live from the Great White North in the Caribou region of British Columbia. And it is snowy. It is cold. Right here on the mountains of SOR headquarters. We want to say hello to everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of the Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live at spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. You can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to Spaced Out Radio by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. We are right there. We are also on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, we are trying something very new here tonight. I just decided to do this about 45 minutes before the show. So I said, screw it. Let's try it out. We are also broadcasting live on Periscope for the first time. So you get to see this ugly mug right now on Periscope. Hello, people. As I watch you on my camera, good to see you. So if we have any audio issues, it's because I had to quickly jimmy and rig something up. So please forgive me if it gets a little staticky or something along those lines. But I am doing my best to make sure that things go on. All right. We have a GoFundMe account going on right now. We are almost 2/3 of our way to our goal of helping raise money to build a brand new studio here in SOR headquarters where we want to turn this into a terrestrial station. So what I need you to do right now, if you don't mind, is go to GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. That's GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. And if you can't afford to donate, I'm really okay with that. I'm cool with that. Just do me a favor. Share the post. That's all you need to do. Share the post. And if you do have the ability to donate, I highly thank you for doing so. And if you could do me a favor, donate it. I'm going to give you a shout out. We got some privileges in there that we want to pass on to you. So let's give it a try. GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. And if you head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Read up on the encounter online. My latest blog there is as well. And we've got great videos from Tim Doyle's UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV. The show tonight is going to be broken down in 2 segments. The first hour, we are going to be opening up the phone lines to you. We're going to talk disclosure. We're going to talk some interesting information I found out about Bob Bigelow recently. And it has ties to British Columbia right here, north of me, in a little hick town like where I am. 702-302-4556. 702-302-4556 is the phone number if you want to check it out. And we're also going to check out how the mainstream media treated me yesterday when I called out to try and get a reporter to look into this information. So I want to continue to get your thoughts on disclosure, the importance of it, or whether or not the whole thing is blown out of proportion. In hours 2 and 3, we're going to talk with a man who's an author, former U.S. Army Special Forces soldier who did 4 tours in Vietnam, and he also did some work in detail for Robert Bigelow's Skinwalker Ranch. We're talking skinwalkers and what's happening in the Utah Basin. And in hour number 3, with John B. Alexander, we are also going to get into the disclosure movement. Is it truly happening, or is it just a wolf in sheep's clothing? You be the judge. For some reason, I think he's going to hold back tonight. But we're going to check it out in hours 2 and 3 with John B. Alexander. So, tonight, we're opening up the lines right off the bat. So some of the information, as you know, I have not been a fan of the whole disclosure project. You know this. I have been very open about and opinionated publicly regarding my belief in the whole paranormal process in regards to disclosure. There's something missing to me. And when I see red flags, I definitely want to check it out. I want to see what's going on. The one thing that I can't stand is not having the truth. So, as I play with my headphones here on camera, some of the things I found out. I was reading an article recently where a gentleman up in Houston, British Columbia, which is literally a town probably the size of where SOR headquarters is. And this gentleman used to be a UFO individual. He used to be a guy who's reports. He's a guy who would take reports confidentially. Okay, Houston is approximately 3,147 people. So from my house, where I am, I'm just getting a distance here on how far it is. It's a 6-hour, 59-minute drive. Like, could they just round it up to 7 hours? Who actually timed that out at 6 hours, 59 minutes? So it's 613 kilometers. So that's about 400 miles north of me. All right? Like, this is in the middle of nowhere. Anyways, this gentleman named Brian Vike, his name didn't come up, but his story did. And what I mean by that, everyone, is the fact that Robert Bigelow, as we know, and it is proven because James Carrion, the former international director for MUFON, actually resigned over this. We know Robert Bigelow had purchased files from MUFON. All right? He purchased files from MUFON. Personal, confidential files of you and whoever else put in their reports, their UFO reports, their abduction stories, okay, to MUFON. It really wasn't cool. And I learned in an article that I read that he did the exact same thing for... There we go. Now you can see me properly on camera. He did the exact same thing for this UFO researcher named Brian Vike up in Houston, British Columbia. He purchased the entire files. Now, I finally put 2 and 2 together here the other day. How I put 2 and 2 together, people, was 2 years ago, I actually found a contact email for Brian Vike because there's still on Google a lot of his information about UFOs, etc. All right? As you see me leaning here on camera, I'm just moving my heater. The floor is cold here in Canada. And anyhow, what happened was I contacted Brian a couple years ago before I was able to really understand who Robert Bigelow is. I knew who he was. I knew he owned the Skinwalker Ranch. I knew he had some major interest and intrigue in UFOs as well. So I started looking at it, and I never put the two together until I read this article about him buying UFO files from Canada. All right? From Canada. And using them for his own business. The weird part about it is I don't know how many files he got. I have not talked to Brian Vike. I have not messaged him yet. I am planning on doing so. But my intrigue goes as far as this. Why does an American researcher want Canadian files? Especially an American researcher who is working for the U.S. government or in cahoots with the United States government in black operations. This is difficult. This is difficult. And those of you on Twitter right now at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, thanks for placing or taking the ugliest pictures of me ever possible. I appreciate that. Anyways, how did he, or what does he want with Canadian files? What does he want with Canadian experiences? I find that to be a little intriguing. Because in reality, everything seems to be coming together. Remember a few weeks ago, I had mentioned to you about my conversation with an RCMP officer. An RCMP officer who I had a conversation about UFOs with. What do you do if somebody calls in a report to your local RCMP station? And as obvious as the question was, the answer was, I really don't understand why it hit me so wrong. All right? As I get bugged right now by our Spaced Out Radio listeners, So, how does it bug me? Well, let's take a look here as my headphones fall off. It bugs me because of a couple of reasons. Number one, okay, I realize, and I'm not naive to the fact, that we're the little brother here in the northern part of Canada. Okay? We're the little brother compared to the United States. I'm good with that. I'm quite okay with that. All right? Very much okay with that. However, this is what happens if you're new to this topic. This is what happens if you call the Royal Canadian Mounted Police with a UFO sighting. So I talked to this police officer, and I said to him, what happens, or what's the protocol if you are having a UFO sighting and somebody calls it into you? And his first answer was, on the ground or in the air? And I said, really? And I kind of snickered over that. On the ground or in the air? And I remember thinking, I said, okay, let's start on the ground. And he stated to me, well, if a UFO is on the ground and you call it in, or pardon me, let's start with in the air. That's what it was. I apologize. He said, if the craft is in the air and you see it, immediately what happens here is you need to, when the call comes into us, we call RCMP headquarters, which is in Ontario, and then we immediately call NORAD in Colorado. NORAD, of course, the Northern Organization for Radar Air Defense, then immediately scrambles 2 CF-18 Hornets, either out of Cold Lake, Alberta, or Comox, British Columbia, depending on where they are, all right, to try and intercept this aircraft. All right, so when that happens, the report automatically goes into the United States hand. Now, if the craft is on the ground, RCMP are dispatched. They immediately contact the military through RCMP headquarters in Ontario, and then once again through NORAD. NORAD handles it all. You will notice there is, on camera, on Periscope, there is no gnomes around here. None. Gnome-free area. Anyways, when you look at it, all reports through our police force, our national police force, the RCMP, goes straight to NORAD. It does make sense. It really does. However, U.S. reports don't come to Canada unless that aircraft is flying towards, where is it? The border? They cross the border illegally. We're going to have to build a wall. Anyhow, when this happens, all the Canadian information goes straight into, once again, being in American hands. Now, I realize our American listeners out there, which is probably 70% of our listenership, are like, who really cares? Who cares? What's the point? What are you getting at, Dave? The point is, would you want your national security, everything about it, like UFOs, brought into Canadian knowledge? Now, granted, obviously, you guys protect most of North America, and we really need the help because our military, for as strong as it is not very technically savvy, and our planes are 30 years old plus. We're still flying original CF-18s, what we call them up here. Okay, but our boys are good. Our ladies are good. So that leads to the whole Robert Bigelow disclosure project. Okay, trying to put the two together. Here we go. Bigelow purchased Canadian, as I don't stutter here, Canadian UFO stories and files. Now, I realize when somebody buys a business, okay, they get everything that goes along with that. There is nothing that is held. When you purchase it, all right, when you purchase a business, you get their computers, you get their file systems, you get absolutely everything. I do that. I do get that. That makes sense to me. Mr. Skeptic says, so giving the information to American hands is what you call reporting to NORAD? You know that's a joint U.S.-Canada organization, right? I think you got to get the Q-tips out because I did say that. So I'm snarking back at you right now. Thank you. Anyways, the point is that Bigelow, we know he infiltrated MUFON. That's already been proven. He threw the money that MUFON needed because MUFON was broke. He threw about $650,000 at them, give or take a couple $1,000. And then he said to them, what I want in return is I want your best files of alien contact and abduction. And MUFON said, it's confidential, but that's okay. We'll do that. Absolutely. This is why, if you remember 2 nights ago, I read the resignation letter of James Carrion, their international director. Okay, Skeptic says, I heard. I just don't understand your translation of the whole NORAD thing. I understand the calls go to NORAD, which is Joint Canada-US. However, I was surprised to learn that because I thought they would stay right here in Canada rather than being enacted through NORAD if it's in Canadian land or within the Canadian borders. We do have a Ministry of Defense and a military headquarters. Not everything has to go to NORAD. That was my point that I was trying to get. I hope I cleared that up for you. Anyways, the whole point that I'm getting at here, guys and girls, is we know that Bigelow infiltrated MUFON. But when he started buying up little groups' profiles and their knowledge and their reports, I think that's a little off. Now, a lot of people said, that's business. That's just the way things go. However, I look at it differently. If you're an experiencer of ET contact, and you are someone who has privately given your information, your phone numbers, your sighting, your personal information, your email, your address, to somebody, you gave it in good faith. You didn't give them your personal information and your personal account because it's distressing enough. You were looking for somebody to talk to. You didn't expect that person who's supposed to be independent of everything to sell out and hand it to a contractor of the United States government who apparently between 2007 and 2012 was housing alien technology or alien artifacts, whatever you want to call them, extraterrestrial artifacts, metals, whatever he has there, at Bigelow Industries in Las Vegas, in his warehouse. You didn't do that. You signed up because a researcher allowed you to earn his trust. And he shot that right back in your face. He shot it right back in your face, right, by selling out to Robert Bigelow. Now, the big question is, what does Bigelow need or want with Canadian files? Now, 2 years ago, when I talked to Brian Vike, and I asked him if he would be an interview guest on this show, and I didn't know about the whole Bigelow thing literally until a couple days ago. And he said to me, he goes, I would love to, but I'm just not doing the UFO thing anymore. All right? I'm just not doing it. It's not my thing. I'm not taking any further reports. Sorry. I'm just not into the UFOs anymore. And I went, okay, that's too bad, because I've been looking for a Canadian ufologist, and they seem very difficult to find here on the West Coast to interview. And he goes, not a problem. He goes, sorry I couldn't help, but thanks for checking in. Appreciate your time, and good luck with you. It was a nice conversation. He was very polite, of course. He's fellow Canadian. But now it makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense because Bigelow bought him out. So what I'm going to be doing here in the next little bit, and I'm going to do it carefully, I'm going to craft this carefully, is I'm going to send Mr. Vike an email. And I'm going to see if he's going to answer my questions. Number one, did Bigelow Advanced Aerospace buy out your files? If so, why is it being reported? Pardon me, if not, why is it being reported? And number two, if it is the truth that you did sell them, did you have permission of the people who confidentially gave you information about their experience? Did you have their permission to sell out? That's a big one for me. That's a big one for me. Did you have permission to sell your information, or all of the people's information that you collected over the years? Because I know when I give my bank credit card in, or my bank to get a credit card to give them my information, I want it kept private. I don't want everybody knowing my social insurance number, my address, my date of birth. I don't want it. That's private to me. It's like going to a doctor and having a doctor disclose all your health problems to everybody in the hospital or somebody on the streets. Yeah, you don't want to be by old Jed over there. He's got the clap. I'm his doctor, I know. It's the same way. It really is the same way. So Bigelow has gone around North America and literally bought up UFO files that people gave in full confidence to researchers. And those people profited off of those files. Does that seem fair to you? You can call in and talk to me at 1-702-302-4556. 1-702-302-4556. If you want to chat with me, I will take your call. It's really up to you. But we are talking disclosure tonight. So, do you believe then that that's fair? Eric says in the Spreaker chat room, in his opinion, the only way most people will believe disclosure is if the first of the top of the leaders of the free world announce it live on TV. I can tell you this, John B. Alexander, who's been in the know for numerous years, being one of Robert Bigelow's right-hand men, will tell you that disclosure has been happening the last 30, 40, 50 years. And it's the stupidity and the ego of the public that hasn't picked it up. But think about it for a second. Let's make this more personal right now. And I'm watching the chat rooms. I'm watching Twitter. I really want to know. I can't do messages off of Instagram, or pardon me, off of Periscope. Okay, guys? So make sure you're either on Facebook or you are on Spreaker or Twitter. All right? Now, Keith just posted something interesting here. Thank you for sharing, Keith. It's the disclaimer on MUFON. apparently when you sign, it says, I understand that by posting my pictures, audio, video, media files to this website, I am granting MUFON, its agents, employees, and assigns the exclusive right and permission to do to the same or any part of said media for the purpose MUFON deems necessary and or appropriate, including but not limited to the following: television broadcast, radio broadcast, internet broadcast and or distribution, press releases, website use or promotion, photo of the week, print media, and other lawful use of said media in which MUFON sees fit. I hereby waive and release any claims or actions against MUFON for the said media and agree to hold MUFON harmless for any injury or harm resulting or arising from any use by MUFON of said media. I further certify that I am the author, owner of the submitted media, that I am 18 years old and old or older. All right? Where does it say that you're allowing MUFON to sell your work to a government contractor who works in Black Ops? What you're doing is you're giving MUFON permission to use it in the media. They use the word media there 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times? 5 times? 6, 7 times they use the word media. Last time I checked, Robert Bigelow is not media. All right? Robert Bigelow is not media. He's a government contractor for UFOs. We all know this. Everybody knows this. Bigelow himself knows this. All right? Bigelow himself knows this. 1-702-302-4556 is the phone number. 1-702-302-4556. As we are broadcasting live on Periscope tonight for the first time. We got a call coming in. We are going to add this in there right now. All right. And we got area code 805 calling on in. How are you tonight? Welcome to Spaced Out Radio.
Hey there.
Hey, Eric, how you doing?
Good. I'm just listening to you talk, and I'm excited about your guest coming up. But I wanted to ask you, can we switch over to Paul Hellyer for a minute?
Sure.
Now, I'm curious about you now. I know you've seen and experienced lots of things. When did you first start following this in terms of the press in your country, and how significant was Paul Hellyer as far as in your country? And when he came out and made all the statements that he made not too long ago, how did people react in your country?
Canadians are very, very laid back. They are very astute, as I drop my camera right there. They are not worried about the little things that kind of go on during this type of stuff. It doesn't bother Canadians. It doesn't surprise them. You know, I think we're a very naive type society when it comes to everything. So it's been very difficult, to say the least, to try and, make something happen here in the first place. So when we get into the whole Paul Hellyer exchange, it's got to be noted, like everybody tends to believe or wants to believe that Hellyer, when he was in the government, that he was talking UFOs. And I hope the Twitter crowd likes my sock. That's my popper, so that way you don't hear that. Anyway, so they're looking at my microphone right now. Anyways, so when Paul Hellyer was in government, he had no inkling of UFOs. He said that on Spaced Out Radio a couple of years ago. All right? That he had no clue. Even though in St. Paul, Alberta, during Canada's 100th birthday, he literally, and it's kind of funny actually, he literally was in St. Paul, Alberta to christen a UFO landing pad in case aliens arrived in Canada. This was St. Paul, Alberta's big thing on Canada's century mark. All right?
How long ago was this? About a few years ago?
This was 1967.
Oh, that's more than a few years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 1967 when this happened. So
Okay.
the one thing that I am talking about here, all right, and I'm getting snarked on Periscope already. Aspiring radio host? Ha ha ha. If I, what did it say? If I tied your hands, you couldn't talk? Love it? Thanks. Anyways.
Yeah, you're going to get a lot more trolls on Periscope.
Yeah.
Don't just ignore Periscope.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny, I think it's kind of funny. Anyways.
Just go look at it when you play the show back later, then go read all the snarky comments.
Yeah, I will. It'll be funny. It'll be funny.
It'll be.
Anyways.
Yeah, back to Paul. So I'm just trying to figure out, I remember when he came out and said that somewhere in the neighborhood of 100-plus different races he believed existed. Do you remember all that? That wasn't too many years back.
When I talked to him, he said there was only 5 races that had popped up. 5 races. So, but he firmly believed it wasn't until after he got out of the government, well after he retired from politics, that he decided that, he was going to come out about aliens and UFOs. So,
because he had a sight of his own, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, major, if I remember.
Yeah, I believe he had a sighting of his own, and, he's kind of getting beyond the whole UFO thing right now. What he is doing is he is going more along the lines of the cabal and the Illuminati and trying to really go through there. Like, it's almost like he's done with the UFO side of things because, the message just isn't getting through, correct?
Well, yeah, the bottom line is if the general public, in my opinion, is going to believe this, not the people listening to your show probably, but the general public, it's got to come from the Illuminati, the cabal, whatever you want to call them, that group of people that's controlling this information. That for whatever reason, because the public is on this mass mind control trip, that they're not going to. I just don't believe people. Are going to believe it unless it's announced on TV. I just don't see it happening. I don't know. What's your take on that? What do you think?
I think people are too naive about absolutely everything today, to be honest. I think it's a little ridiculous that, as I'm trying to, if they see me on Twitter, they're like, what the Sam hell is this guy doing on camera? No, it's not an earthquake right now. What I'm trying to do is get my speaker back up because it fell. So that way you guys can hear the audio, but it's not working too well. Anyhow, so what has kind of happened here is with Paul Hellyer, with Canada and everything, we're just a society right now that really just doesn't care. And that's putting it bluntly. We don't care. And unfortunately, it's, there's nobody really stepping up to it right now. There really isn't. And nobody really wants to put their respectability, if you can call it that, on the line. And that's the big problem that we have here.
Well, I think it's the problem of the United States, too, though. I'm not afraid to admit that most of the people in the United States don't care, and I think that if it was announced, that people would trip for a little while, but I'm pretty sure as long as they don't come down and start, the aliens don't come down and invade the planet, which I don't think that'll ever happen, not in our lifetime, then I don't think people are really going to trip too hard once the information is absorbed in their consciousness. I can't hear you. Are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm about 50-50 with you on that. Okay?
Okay.
And the reason why I'm 50-50 on you with that is because I really don't believe right now that the government is really, that the public is really interested in what these topics are. And I think they are going to get absolutely freaked out when it finally comes together and the announcement is made. They are going to harp on the media. Why didn't you tell us? They are going to harp on the government. Why didn't you inform us? We got the religious sects. Why didn't you tell us that God was sending the demons down? Or why didn't God tell us the demons were coming down? You know, maybe, just maybe, if we look at the way they're doing it right now, okay, if we take Canada out of it and just focus on the United States, what we are looking at here is we are looking at how they are segregating and separating UFOs from extraterrestrials. It's almost like they are two absolutely different topics. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense because we don't know for certain that these UFOs have actual living beings inside them. They could be extraterrestrial drones that are being sent down by an advanced consciousness type being that's controlling all these things. I mean, then again, there is the possibility that we're being visited by aliens as well. I'm not going to deny that. But I don't think every spaceship that we see has an alien in it.
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, could they have drones? Possibly. We do. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they? So, I mean, you have to look at it, and I understand why they're separating it, but I'm looking at this from a different angle, Eric, where I honestly believe that the reason why that they are separating the two is the public can handle UFOs. Many people, many more people have had UFO experiences rather than alien experiences. Many skeptics, many snarky people, they've seen UFOs. They have seen other things that have happened that look a little bit anomalous in the sky. What they haven't seen is a little gray dude with big black eyes walking towards you, or standing in your bedroom, or grabbing you by the hand and not giving you a choice that you are going. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, that's a whole nother level of consciousness. When it's one thing to say we are being there are definitely some unidentified flying objects in the sky that we're not sure exactly their whereabouts and where they came from, so on and so forth. That's one thing. But then if you attach to that, that there are these little gray people also, and they've been known to appear in people's bedrooms in the middle of the night, that would freak people out, I think. Would freak me out.
Absolutely. Why wouldn't it? Because the big thing right now is the fact that you can sell UFOs. UFOs is very, very easy to sell. Because worst case scenario, I mean, the way they're deflecting it, we don't know if it's Russian. We don't know if it's North Korean or Chinese. We don't know. We don't even know if it's ours. That one was kind of funny. Heard that one once. Okay. But if they announce that if they tie UFOs, or now UAPs or AATs, unidentified aerial phenomena and advanced aerial threats, now we have an issue if we tie them to aliens. Aliens scare people. They scare people a hell of a lot more than UFOs. And that's the issue.
And then I'm sure a lot of people have had this thought. I'm wondering if you've had this thought. During times of just imagining, I thought, well, let's just say that they did disclose that, UFOs are real. It came out and boom, here it is. Not this little fake disclosure they did on December 16th. Much more impactful. Then, what are they? Well, let's just say there is an advanced race of beings out there. You got to figure that they are observing us. It's pretty apparent to me that that's what's happening. I don't have any evidence of that, but that's what I think is happening. So they have to be intelligent enough to know that if we're disclosing to our people here on Earth, fellow Earthlings are disclosing to each other that we have these non-human entities that exist, that this these non-human entities are going to realize that we're sharing this information, then does that then open the door for them to come in and appear more regularly now that the word is out? Or, you know what I mean? Are they in on the secret too?
That's the big one, buddy. That's the big one. Nobody knows right now, right? Nobody knows. And this is why, you know, and I realize that I have personally taken some heat on this because it's a subject I am just not letting go. But if people like me, and I'm not saying I'm anyone special, okay, but if people like me drop this subject, and when I say me, I'm saying like journalists, drop this subject and don't push it for as far as it needs to go, then we are not doing the public the justice that the public deserves. And the public deserves to know what the hell is going on. I mean, let's face it. We can all sit here and agree, Eric, and anybody listening, that the second biggest story in mankind's history is alien contact. Now, if you're a religious person, number one, of course, would be Jesus Christ coming down from the heavens. But number two is because if you don't sit there and push for it to be brought to everyone's attention, if you don't get people sick of the subject, and many have been sick of this subject for years, but if you don't ask the tough questions, they are going to bully people around. All right? It's just like I said in my theory the other night. The reason why they aren't allowing Elizondo, Mellon, DeLonge, Putoff, talk to anybody in the alternative media besides that one show's crew is because they don't want the hard questions asked. And the way the mainstream media had the wool pulled over their eyes with this entire story, they were not prepared for it. They have no contacts in it because they're not interested in the subject. They think it's full of BS and hokum and garbage. All right? Therefore, when it actually came down in the New York Times and they took it seriously, all right, what you're looking at here, Eric, is you're looking at an unprepared media. So when the media is unprepared in an interview, you know what they do? They throw softballs. They throw softball questions. All right? That's what they do.
Well, I'm sure you're aware that the New York Times does not have the best reputation in terms of their, their stellar honesty and forthright reporting. I mean, they're like one step above of a rag magazine.
Yeah, but Eric, you can say that about almost any media outlet, okay? And I'm not defending the New York Times, okay? I can tell you right now, if one of the papers or one of the websites where I found a lot of my information and it confirmed a lot of what I really knew, if I told you that source, everybody would automatically point their finger at me and say, you're full of crap. I never check out that site because it's been a clickbait site for years. All right? But this one time, they were right. And it's just like the National Enquirer, every now and again, we all know that's a smut magazine, but every now and again, they have it right. Do you see what I'm saying?
You're right. That's a good point. That's a very good point. But I think what I'm trying to say, what I should have said is, let's just say it came out in the USA Today, or let's just say that it was announced through some another source, let's just say other than the New York Times, something maybe with more credibility. I think it might have had more of an impact, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But the fact is, the one thing the New York Times article did, Eric, was they did allow other media outlets to jump on board. And you know what? I am very, very impressed with the way Fox News and CNN haven't dropped the story. Tucker Carlson, just a couple of nights ago, was talking about it again.
I think he had Leslie Keane on. Hasn't she been on recently a few times?
She hasn't been.
Sure.
Yeah, she's doing the media rounds along with Luis Elizondo. All right, Leslie Keane was one of the authors of the New York Times article with Robert Blumenthal, and they did a good piece. They did a very good piece. Okay,
that'd be a good question to ask your guest tonight. Is what's his? Does he know Leslie Keane? What's his take on and why he thinks that certain people are being allowed to disclose this information, as best you can. I'm looking forward to you digging in there a little bit and trying to get into some stuff that we might not normally hear on a typical interview with Mr. Anderson tonight.
Well, we are going to try it. We are going to try it. I mean, he's a difficult man. Okay, he is a very difficult man from people that I have talked to. He's a feisty dude. And you know what? I'm hoping this by golly type chubby Canadian guy can get through that tough thicket that he has going on, and see if we can make this work.
To play the Canadian card, which is kind of cool, because if you were a show here in the United States, then he might look at you differently. Being now that then you're in another country, even though you're like a brother or sister or cousin or whatever, he might give you a little bit of a break, and you could play that here in Canada, whatever, however you got to play it. But if you just whatever it's going to take to get him to open up, I'm rooting for you. Let's say I'll put it to you that way. I'm rooting for you.
Oh yeah, you know what? I can honestly say there are very few times where I've actually been intimidated by a guest. Very few times, and I can honestly say I am looking very, very forward to this interview because I am a little nervous. I really am a little nervous, and I'm a little uptight about it because, I've heard amazing things about this guy, and I've heard some not so amazing things from this guy. I don't know what the truth is, but the thing that we are going to do is we're going to look into this, and we're going to see what we have available and what he's willing to answer. What we do know is obvious. He worked with Bob Bigelow at the Skinwalker Ranch. We already know that, right? And so
it would be nice if we get him to relate at least one or two stories that he would be comfortable telling us about what he experienced at Skinwalker Ranch. It's always nice to hear those stories if he's able to share them. I would think he would. What do you think? You think he'll share some stories about the Skinwalker Ranch tonight?
Well, don't forget, though, he is a lifelong military guy, okay? He isn't going to give up what he knows. He just is not going to give up what he knows whatsoever, all right? He is someone who is very tight-lipped. I mean, the dude's a trained killer. Let's remember that, all right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he spent 4 years in the U.S. Army in Special Forces in Vietnam. He retired as a colonel. And, he's a badass dude. He's a very badass dude. And
well, I can tell you, I met him twice. I met him in Arizona last year in February at the UFO Congress. And then I met him a few months ago again in Arizona at Cottonwood. And he's not a very big man, but he has that look in his eyes, the steely, and he's body language. And I tried to talk to him, and he gave me a look. It wasn't rude. It just was a look that basically let me know that, here's my boundaries, son. You can talk to me, but, you're only getting so far with me. And he didn't even have to say that. I could just feel it from him. And it happened both times that I met him. So I never really pursued much because I just didn't get the vibe that he was really willing to sit down with me and talk to me, one-on-one, because I think he probably knew that I was going to drill him.
He knows you're the awakening man. You're the awakening man.
Yeah, he probably got rumored.
He's like, oh my God, it's the awakening man. I got to stay away from him. That man's trouble. That man's trouble.
But no, hopefully maybe ask him what he does, if he likes to golf or if he's a fisherman. Get him talking about something he enjoys to do that he has fun with. Get him loose a little bit. And then pop one of those questions.
And then what do I do if he says, I like to kill? I like to kill.
Well, I don't blame you, sir. I mean, you were trained to feel that way. Oh God! And then Vietnam. I mean, I don't know if you've heard this, but I've heard stories. I actually talked to a guy in Vegas at the 5D conference. Matter of fact, I think he was there too at the 5D conference, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
anyway,
he lives
I
in
talked to
Vegas.
this guy. He was in Vietnam. He actually has a radio show that he does in Vegas, a UFO paranormal radio show. And he was in Vietnam, and I asked him, I said, I've heard rumors that people saw things in the sky in Vietnam. I've never talked to anybody, but I've read it. And then I go, can you share anything that you know or you saw or you heard with us? And it was just me. It was Brad Olson, the Reverend John Polk, and this other guy, Jeff. I can't think of his last name. He was the radio show host. All of us were in the room together. And he started to tell this story, and I could just feel it was going to be a great story. And then all of a sudden, he got very emotional, and he literally teared up, and he had to stop because it was obvious that he was going into a memory bank that he had put in a compartment somewhere in his mind, and it was bringing back these memories, and he didn't want to go there, so we just basically, I just said, hey, don't worry about it. You don't have to tell us if you don't want
Eric, I got to let you go there. I got a quick call here. We're about a minute away from break. Thanks for calling
I'll
in.
look forward to your show, buddy.
All right. Area code 423. How you doing?
Hey, this is Tommy. How you doing this evening?
Good, Tommy. Thanks for calling in. We only got about a minute before we got to go to break already, my friend.
Oh, so you want me to call back another time?
Well, what's your quick question here, and I'll see if I can answer it.
Well, I didn't necessarily have a question.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, you know what?
It was more than 45 seconds, So.
Oh, darn it. All right, let me go off to break here because I am going to bring our guest on in the next hour, and I'm not going to be taking calls with him. But let's do this, my friend. I'm just looking at my schedule. I probably will open up the phone lines maybe probably on Monday night. Okay, we're going to be talking UFOs with Tim Doyle. All right?
Disclosure. That's what I was chiming in on.
Absolutely. You call in Monday night, we'll get your call on.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. That's fine. It's a great subject. I just recommend, if you hadn't heard the latest last night, Wilcock was on in place of Corey Good, who had to go to emergency at Jimmy Church's show last night with his new 26-page document you could probably find on Wilcock's website, possibly by today. Incredible happenings going on that too bad I didn't have more time.
All right.
So excited about all that stuff.
Tommy, I got to run here. Thank you so much for calling in. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this.
Hey, space travelers, it's Joe Roop, your host of Spaced Out Saturdays. Come join me as we explore the realms of the paranormal, the esoteric, and everything in between every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. You know the truth is out there. Don't get caught sleepwalking. Come join Spaced Out Saturdays. That's every Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, right here on spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over Spaced Out Radio Night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
There's a lot of strange going on in this world, and we can help you find out what's going on with you. Paranormal, cryptids, UFOs in the sky, aliens in your bedroom tickling your toes. We have the investigators you need to find out the answers you deserve. All you have to do is head to spacedoutradio.com. Your information is 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report. It's free, and we're here to help.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our Advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we step away from the conspiracy side of things and we get into the paranormal. Lance Eberhardt is going to be here to talk about the ghosts, the spirits, the demons walking around his family farm in Kansas. It's going to be interesting indeed. We get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Great to have you with us as well. We are also live on the Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Telesthesia. Telesthesia is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show. You can give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also follow me on Instagram, Dave Scott SOR. Go to our YouTube channel for our archives. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Make sure you subscribe to that. Our website, once again, is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. You can also read up on the encounter online, watch videos from UFO seekers and Contact TV, and so much more at spacedoutradio.com. And once again, we want to remind you that if you have the ability to share or donate, we have a GoFundMe account going on right now. We could use your help. We're trying to build a new studio because we're going terrestrial. GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. That's GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. Tonight, we are bringing in our guest. We're doing things a little bit differently tonight because our guest tonight, Mr. John Alexander, award-winning author, ufologist, United States Army hero. He is someone who had a little bit of a busy evening, so he decided that if he could come on the final 2 hours of the show, that would be very good for him. Dr. Alexander has written a great book called Reality Denied, First-Hand Experiences with Things That Can't Happen, But Did. The foreword is by Uri Geller. Top-notch book. His website, johnbalexander.com. He once worked with the Skinwalker Ranch. He is, like I said, a United States Army hero serving in Vietnam. And Mr. Alexander, we thank you so much for your service to your country and for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Dave. Great to be here.
When did you first learn about the Skinwalker Ranch? And did you believe, when you first heard about it, all the rumors that kind of went along with it?
Well, they actually evolved over time. I'd heard a little about it, and I was actually with Bob Bigelow the day that he bought the ranch, actually signed for it, and spent that night on the ridge line overlooking the ranch. So I was the first one of the NIDS crew to participate actively at the ranch. I might add the biggest thing that happened was a lot of mosquito bites, but it's an amazing place.
For those of us who have never been there before, Dr. Alexander, do you mind explaining where it's located in Utah and basically the surroundings of the area? Because the picture I get in my mind is it's kind of like in a mountainous valley, just sitting there, waiting for weird things to happen.
Well, yeah, funny you should say that. It's near Vernal or Roosevelt, Utah, which is on kind of the central or south central eastern side of the state, not far from where they have a massive amount of dinosaur bones, by the way, a great place to visit for that. the topography is actually very, very flat, except on the north side where you had a mesa that rose about 100 to 200 feet straight up. So this area is actually quite flat. There's a lot of Russian olives in the area, streams bisecting it. The mountains that you're referring to are a little bit further to the north.
So when you guys went there for the first time, you had heard the stories about what was going on. We all know Mr. Bigelow has a lot of interest in the weird and the strange, the paranormal and the ufological. Were you convinced when you first went there personally that all of these happenings were going on, or were you quite skeptical in trying to figure out whether or not these happenings were real?
Well, let's remember, we stayed up there for, about 6 years. And a lot of what I wrote about in the chapter on Skinwalker occurred during that period. We had heard a number of the stories from Terry of the incidents that had happened to him, but it was, initially on the, well, let's see what happens kind of thing. And as it turns out, a lot happened, obviously, and quite a bit with our folks. We're talking PhD level scientists actually observing the incidents or being involved in them.
Are you able to go into details with some of these incidents? Because there's a big faction of the UFO and paranormal community who strongly believes that everything that has happened at the Skinwalker Ranch was made up.
They can believe whatever they want. It's real. What's real? Well, the events that happened. Again, these are... We could spend the whole hour just describing, the events that occurred. One that occurred with Terry that we certainly believe happened was that this was before Bob had bought the ranch, and he's out working one day, and it's around noon, and he sees this dog kind of trotting across from the west towards them. And as it got closer and closer, he said, "Oh, that's not a dog, it's a wolf." And then when it got very close, he said, because it stood right next to him and his head was in his chest, he said, "This is a really big wolf. And it must be somebody's pet or domesticated." So they pet it. And so then Terry went back to work. And he had in the area, there was a small cow pen with, heavy metal pipe fencing, and a cow and a calf in there. And all of a sudden, he hears this hollering sound, and the wolf has reached under the bottom row. So he got about 15 or maybe 18 inches there, and he's grabbed the calf by the snout and is trying to pull it, down and under. So, and Terry's a big guy, and he grabs a 2x4 that was there and slams the wolf, and that does nothing. And then finally the wolf lets go, so he pulls out his, I believe it was a .357 Magnum that he had there, and shot 6 times into the area, thoracic area where heart should be, which should have killed anything. And at that juncture, the wolf sort of takes off walking. And that just shouldn't happen. But his truck was there, and he had an elk rifle. I think it was 280 grain. And as the wolf continued just walking away, just at a slow pace, he fires, and what he notices is that chunks of flesh come flying off, and then the wolf just finally disappears. Even the elk rifle didn't bring him down. One of the more amazing aspects of it, though, is that went over where he saw these chunks that had come off and smelled them, and it was putrefied. And that's something that shouldn't have happened for about 2 weeks after death.
When you were at the ranch, did you have any incidents specifically happen to you?
No. Which is interesting. We did have Eric Davis, who was one of our guys, an astrophysicist, had events that tended to happen around him. I can't say that I personally observed any of these. Now, you'd asked about the reality of the events. Let me give you another one that happened definitely under our purview that is most amazing. This has to do with cattle mutilation. It's calving season, and about 10 o'clock in the morning. And again, the topography in this area is just a flat, wide-open field. So Terry goes out and he finds a newborn calf, and what they do is they tag it and weigh it, and they tag it for identification to the mother. And takes all of that data, then he drives across the field, maybe a couple hundred meters, and he finds another newborn calf, and he tags that and he weighs it. Then he came back, and calf 1 is dead. And not only is it dead, but about 20 pounds of stuff is missing. It has been exsanguinated. The bones, with the exception of one femur, are all intact. An ear has been as if surgically removed, looked like a laser-type cut, and that was the ear that would have had the tag on it, and that's just totally missing. Now, we looked at all of the options of, how various predators kill. This fits none of them. And remember, we're talking, again, bright sunny morning, flat, wide open area. Some people suggested, well, maybe it was rustlers or something, which makes absolutely no sense. Being exsanguinated, they suggested, well, maybe the blood seeped into the soil. So I suggested, and they went to the house and got blood, went to another spot nearby and poured it on the ground. And weeks later, you could look at it and say, there's blood on the ground. And, of course, none of that was present at the point where the calf had been killed, butchered, exsanguinated, And I say that because we were able to have our veterinarian on the scene that day. So these are physical events that happened, under our watch, and were able to be examined in considerable detail.
What do you think caused that? Because there is a lot of people who speculate that it was aliens or some sort of, supernatural happenstance that was mutilating these cows because of the incisions that were laser crisp and laser straight. It was very accurate in the markings that were left on the calf.
Right. I have absolutely no idea. As I think I've written in both this book and in UFOs, Myths, Conspiracies, and Realities about something that I call the precognitive sentient phenomena. And I came to that based on the events that did happen at the ranch. And what I mean by that is, when I say precognitive, that there's a force of some kind out there that knows how the researchers were going to respond before the event happened. Sentient, because the damn thing, whatever it is, it's certainly smart and intelligent, and certainly meets the category of phenomena. In most folklore traditions, they talk about the trickster and Kokopele and etc., various Pan, various kinds of sources of intelligence that trick people all the time. My point, though, was whatever it was in charge, and we were definitely responding to it as opposed to the other way around.
Was it ever seen by human eyes or recorded on camera?
No. And it, when I say it is something that is so complex that I don't know that it even has a form. It certainly has some measure of consciousness. Remember, in the UFO book, I start out with UFOs are real. I think we're going to talk about that later. The last paragraph says, whatever this is, it is far more complex than we have imagined or possibly can imagine. Now, I do take the position that there's a whole range of phenomena from UFOs, near-death experiences, the poltergeist, psychokinesis, remote viewing, post-mortem communications, firewalking, even cryptozoology. And my view is that these are all interrelated somehow, and that consciousness is certainly a piece of that. But whatever this is, it is certainly not simple. And you're not going to get quick answers. It's A, and that solves the puzzle. That's just not going to happen.
What do you think is causing these experiences in that specific area and nowhere else in Utah or very few places around the world?
Well, I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. It does seem to be concentrated there, but you do hear about areas, and actually in quite a few places around the world, where anomalous events seem to congregate. Since we don't understand why there is just, I think, way beyond. What it does tell us is that this is a place that's worthy of observation. Now, we also know when Bob finally sold the ranch that, what happened during the periods that we were observing, we actually saw for quite a while, a dramatic decrease in activity. Again, you get back, the area was instrumented. We had cameras going 24/7, had other kinds of instrumentation. Even went so far, as you may know, they put in dog pens. They said, okay, let's see if, animate sensors can pick up something. And again, you get back to the PSP, or precognitive sentient phenomena, what would happen is you'd get an event, and then we would say, oh, well, we ought to study it. Here's how you'll study it. And it, whatever it is, again, would say, oh, you like that? Try this. And you'd get something considerably different, or it would happen just outside of the camera range, or would happen with the camera staring at it, but would not appear.
Mr. Alexander, why the secrecy around Skinwalker Ranch if so much of this is happening that even everyday people are experiencing, whether it's portals, UFOs, paranormal attacks? I mean, this is something that affects a lot of people, not only in the United States and Canada, but around the world. And it seems like this was a congregation place by some very powerful people, such as yourself, Mr. Bigelow, and others, and yet, it's like an armed fortress trying to get in there.
No, there's guards there. Well, you've got to remember, this always was a working ranch. One of the misnomers was that, Bob lost money and, just as this was a toy. Even, of course, Terry had it working before NIDS took it over. And during the time that we were there were cattle on there all the time. And part of the issue from a resource perspective is like anything else. You don't invite strangers into your laboratory and say, here, muck about, in any research area.
I can understand that, but why do you think that the Skinwalker Ranch then has become so infamous? Do you think it lives up to its ability because, of maybe George Knapp and his story? There's other groups that have gone there. Paranormal television shows have walked the perimeter trying to find the elusive Skinwalker that the Ute tribes are trying to say is real in those valleys and hills. Why do you think it's so infamous then?
Well, I have no idea. And remember, the ranch, by definition, had, a specific set of geographic coordinates. What we know is that these events happen, outside the actual perimeter of the ranch itself, and have been going on for decades, if not centuries.
How do you know centuries, though? Would that be from the First Nations?
Century.
Yeah, First Nations folklore?
Yeah, well, yes.
Do you believe
that... Not unusual.
Oh, please, go ahead.
No, I say that's not unusual. It's about the only way you're going to get information that dates that far back. There certainly weren't people out there recording it. This was a very sparsely populated area anyway. And, the Native Americans generally did not want to be in the area. And that's something that had grown up just from in local traditions. Why is that? You'd have to ask the Utes who live in the area.
Were some of the happenings at the Skinwalker Ranch scary enough for researchers to leave? Because some of the things I have read on this, not knowing what is real and what is not real in, the life of the paranormal, we have heard stories that some researchers got so freaked out by the events, whether it was UFOs, beings or entities walking through portals, that they got scared enough where they left. Did people leave their posts?
I have not heard that, with the exception of one idiot. Those were the folks working with Jesse Ventura. And I think they made that up for, for television entertainment purposes.
So you're not a fan of Jesse Ventura's reporting on it then?
Well, remember, he kind of nailed... They did an ambush. They had... asked me if I would be interviewed, and the topic was to be civilians in space, which made a lot of sense because I knew both Burt Rutan, who put Mike Melville into space and won the X Prize, and of course Bob with the work that he was doing with Bigelow Aerospace. So that made sense. So they came, and everything was polite, and we talked. We actually interviewed for a couple of hours. One of the things that people have noted was they said I looked like I was scared and trying to get away from him. What happened in reality, like I said, the interview was over. I started to get up. You know how they put the mic pack on your back there, and so I was going to take that off, and all of a sudden some idiot on the sideline says, "What about Skinwalker Ranch?" Where I said, I thought we agreed not to talk about that, because they had sent me a list of questions and the topics that we were going to discuss, and Skinwalker was not among them. So anyway, that's when he and his minions started addressing it. And one of his questions was, what if I told you that Bigelow had aliens, meaning space aliens, working at Bigelow Aerospace? And my response was, I think your bullshit filter doesn't work very well. And for the 2 hours of talking, those are the two statements that they actually aired. So I've been able to set up from the start. I'm not a fan of being ambushed like that. If they'd asked, we could have had a straightforward conversation on it. But he had sent some folks up there and went, whoa, isn't this scary? And went running out. I think they'd made it 20 yards over the fence or something like that.
The high security that is around that is intimidating for a lot of people.
High security. Wait.
Well,
what do you mean high security?
Well, I mean, when you have... I'm Canadian. We don't have very many guards walking around with guns in certain places. Maybe in the diamond mines up north and the local prisons. So I do know, and you've already stated that there are armed guards around the facility.
When we were there were no armed guards. I think later a few were put in, but I mean, this is like one or two guys or something. It's a pretty big area, so it's not like armed guards at the gates or lights and fence, barbed wire fence or anything like that. In fact, in the north, I don't know that the line is even defined where this is be up on the mesa where the property starts and stops. So the notion of, remember, I came from, my second career was Los Alamos National Laboratory. That was a secure facility.
Yes, sir.
By this comparison, this is nothing.
Well, coming up here where, it's very rare to see something like that, I hope you can understand my definition of it. I'm not trying to be rude or sensationalize. I hope you do understand that.
Now, wait a minute. You got to remember, I have worked with the Canadian military in that, and I have seen some of your facilities that are much more heavily guarded than anything at the ranch. You're talking something on the ranch much more akin to, okay, you got a watchman.
Thank you for clarifying that. And so with the watchmen that were... Yes.
Yeah, I might answer. I understand there's a lot of mythology around that. For the folks that are interested, again, in Reality Denied, I've covered it in a chapter. I also recommend the book that Colin Kelleher and George Knapp did on the search for the Skinwalker, which is pretty damn accurate.
Do you think, then, that there is an actual Skinwalker-type shapeshifter in that area?
Well, remember, Skinwalker Ranch didn't become Skinwalker Ranch until, I think, after NIDS left. People were just looking for a name, and they went to, I believe that's Navajo, and heard tales about it. Again, you've got to remember that the range of phenomena is so great that to just say, is there a shapeshifter there? Who knows? That's, if you go back to the Wolf story, that was certainly something that was behaving in a most unusual way, in which you had physical interaction with something that did not respond as it should to, stimuli, being a shot with a gun. But you cannot, and I can't stress this enough, you cannot get back to simplified answers. Is it A? Is it B? Is it, it is so complex that these simple answers just defy all of the observations.
So what kind of creatures are there if there was so much phenomenon type happening? Because I think the public...
Well, no, I'm sorry. You're getting back to, is it A, is it B, is it this? Yeah, creatures appeared, lights appeared, UFOs appeared. We had just this wide range of phenomena. It wasn't a or a B or... a Skinwalker or that. That is just too simple.
Please understand, though, for the public, it is hard to fathom. Please understand, though, that for the public, that is very hard to fathom because they're not in a situation like that on a daily basis for the most part.
No, that's fine. Actually, there are a large number of people. Remember, about 70% of the people in the world, at least adults, believe that they have had some kind of paranormal experience. And the range of those experiences also are from simple precognitive, psychokinetic kinds of things to materializations, to abductions, to interactions with sentient beings. I mean, the list of these things go on and on and on. And there is a strong desire to have some kind of simple answer. When we talked earlier today, I mentioned that I think that whatever we're dealing with is at least as complex as AIDS or cancer, probably much more so. And yet when you get into what kind of research is being done in these areas, it's minuscule. I mean, my best guess was total in the world in psi phenomena is maybe $10 million. And you bump that up against hundreds of millions to billions of dollars being put into healthcare and things like that. And so I think there's a strong need to expand the area of research. And the critical issue, in my view, one of my mantras, is that we need to make it permissible for top scientists to be involved in researching these things without risking their reputation, livelihood, or career. And right now, being associated with research in any of these areas is not what we call career enhancing.
This is very intriguing because, I mean, for this show, Dr. Alexander, this is the first time we've had someone in depth from the inside actually look into or open up about the Skinwalker Ranch on this show. We've only done this topic one other time in our 3-year history of broadcasting here. So I do apologize if some of the questions seem very simplified and because it's questions that you've probably been hit on many a times over the years on the show. However, when it comes to your own personal experiences, did you have your own personal experiences leading up to this to make you a believer, or was it the evidence that was provided out of Skinwalker Ranch to NIDS that made you fully believe that there is something more to life that we aren't understanding?
I don't understand the question. Remember, I came to NIDS with a considerable background in the range of various phenomena, things that had happened. This, by the way, is the whole purpose of the book of Reality Denied, because every chapter addresses different sets of phenomena, all of which I have had personal encounters with. NIDS was, that's after I had retired the second time. So, because I had been involved. Remember, my doctorate was headed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She's the one who brought hospice to the United States, and with Raymond Moody had, got the term near-death experiences. And after that, and long before NIDS, I had been on the board of IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and became the president of that eventually. What we did in the intelligence community, people certainly have heard of remote viewing, a Stargate program, and I was doing parallel research in psychokinesis, and these events were happening. So, Skinwalker is just certainly an interesting, enlightening episode. Have gone on from there to, now deal with shamans all over the world, and certainly have seen things that are at least as interesting as Skinwalker things. So again, very broad, long-term interest in these areas.
How did you then get involved on the private sector with Bob Bigelow? Because he is so intriguing and compelling when it comes to all of these subjects. Or did he reach out to you because of your experiences through the military and what you worked on with what you just said?
not again. I go into this in some detail in both books. No, it was the first time I had met him, and that was only briefly, was at MIT when Dave Pritchard and John Mack had a conference on abduction phenomena, and I gave a talk there about the parallels between abduction phenomena and near-death experience. That was a tough act, by the way. I happened to go on immediately following John Mack, and that was an act to follow. But what had happened serendipitously, I was about to retire from Los Alamos, a second retirement, and I got a call out of the blue from Bob Bigelow. And he just said, gee, I've heard about you. Have you got anything of interest that might need support? And I said, it's funny you should mention that, because standing in my kitchen right now are a number of scientists. We had been meeting at my house in Santa Fe for the weekend to talk about these sorts of issues. And, like I say, just coincidentally, at that moment, he calls and then flew over, and I'd say the rest is history.
What's it like working with this man of mystery to so many of us?
Working with whom now?
The man of mystery is what a lot of people will call Bob Bigelow, because he doesn't give a lot of press, doesn't give a lot of interviews, and yet he seems so tied in to the field of ufology and the experiences people are having.
Well, he runs a private company, or companies, I should say, had made a lot of money. Some suggest it's $1 billion, privately held, so nobody knows for sure. In extended stay real estate, had personal interest in these areas. If you heard the 60 Minutes interview, he described something there that I was familiar with, and that was a UFO incident up close and personal with his grandparents. Certainly a very inquisitive fellow. Also runs a very tight ship, hence keeps a lot of the information to himself, and I guess under the capitalistic system, that's what one can do.
Why does he have such an intrigue in the field of ufology? You're going
to have to interview him. I cannot speak for someone else's intent or interest in those sorts of things. So.
I can understand that. I think that's a fair
I can
answer.
say it's real, but I can't tell you why. I don't have that insight into his internal cogitation.
So do you think then, like Mr. Bigelow does, do you think then UFOs and aliens are real and have been visiting here?
I am not sure how to answer that. We have different views. One of the things that I point out, I do come down against what's called the ETH, or the extraterrestrial hypothesis. And again, that is because it's just too simple and does not fit the data. The point is that there have been reports of interactions between humans and sentient non-human beings for millennia throughout the entirety of human history in all cultures, and they vary dramatically. One of the problems with the ETH is, why is it that certain types of beings show up in certain areas that, in the galactic conference, they get together and subdivide the Earth? I would also say we must be on the bucket list of places in the galaxy that others must visit or something, given the wide variety of sentient beings that are reported. Again, I get back to the complexity of the phenomena that we're dealing with. And everybody wants a simple answer, is it fairies, the Mahuni, take your pick of other kinds of beings that, again, have been reported. You can go back to Rip Van Winkle if you wish, and it shows up in all cultures. Not always the same. The same, or the cohesive pieces in this, are humans, sentient non-humans, various types of contact, some positive, some negative. Can we explain that? And if I can drop back again, this gets back to my mantra. These are terribly complex issues. I think that we need to engage the best scientific minds involved in this, but the problem is they understand that any association with it creates a stigma which impacts, the other research in the straight world and puts them at a severe disadvantage. Again, very complex. Ain't little green guys or gray guys from Zeta Reticuli, in my view.
Well, what about the humanoids? I'll throw that out there as a sarcastic question for you.
That's what we were just talking about.
Oh, I know. And
the problem is that you have this wide variety from humans and Nordics and Greys and reptilians and, take your pick. That, I think, is a piece of the complexity. It ain't that simple. It's not, again, I use Zeta Reticuli just as we know it's one of the closest areas, and if they transited space, it would, come from there. Does not answer the questions. And again, every culture throughout millennia.
I'm baffled at what to say. Very rarely am I actually quite shut down on questions, because normally when we sit here on this show and we talk a lot about these subjects, whether it's Skinwalker Ranch or getting into the extraterrestrials and disclosure, which we will do in the next hour, usually it's not as complex. I think as humans or people who have had experiences or talk shows like this, Dr. Alexander, we're trying to simplify the subject so that we can all comprehend. And by the sounds of what you're telling us tonight, it's not that simple as just black and white.
That's certainly true. But it's, would you ask your average listener to go out and do neurosurgery? Just as a degree of complexity. And I think that what one has to do is to get actively involved. One of the problems is that you have, again, this vast number, millions and millions, probably, I guess if we extrapolate, billions of people have had some form of psychic phenomena. And from that, those who are interested, some are interested and some just don't want to know anymore, but those who get interested tend to isolate their interest into some, what I consider to be small aspect of the broader issues. That's what leads me to, the complexity. And I totally understand why it makes sense. If some ET or some being pops up and looks in, I'm on the second floor here, I see a face in the window. I would really wonder, what is that? And I might focus on that particular aspect. And I think one of the things that differentiates me between many of the other researchers is this notion of looking far more broadly and trying to, cast a wider net and look for the similarity. I would mention that, for several years I have been pushing a concept, what I call the need for a step back conference, in which what one would do is to bring together a number of senior researchers who have had, again, broad experience, and then start doing monstergrams, i.e. write on the board, say, all right, what are the observations? Not tell me about a UFO or tell me about a poltergeist or, a ghost or whatever you want to have. Just say, what do you observe, and write down and post in there the observations without value being attributed. By value, I mean assigning a name to it, or because of the stovepiping. And then what I think you need to do is to step back, hence the name of the thing, and look at it and say, okay, what does macro pattern analysis tell us about this range of phenomena? My bet is, or best guess, is that this is where you're going to find that human consciousness, if not other consciousness as well, are going to be, emergent as the common factor that transcends all of these issues. The problem that has emerged, even in the research areas, is stovepiping. You take a research topic. Let me give you a near-death experience, because I'm vitally familiar with it. We thought that a near-death experience was something that happened in a discrete period of time that was probably very short. We've learned that they go longer. What we did not anticipate is that, oh, by the way, after recovering from this, people would have other experiences, precognition, psychokinesis, etc., etc. We did not expect that there would be multiple kinds of things. Information could be derived during these things. We also learned, as president, I used to answer a lot of the letters, and people would say, I wasn't close to death, but, and they would go in and describe characteristics that sounded very much like a near-death experience. So clearly there was something else. But the researchers, the first thing you do is you start delineating, and that, in my view, is the key mistake.
When you were involved with the Skinwalker during Bigelow's and Nid's ownership of the ranch, were you able to crack some of these lifelong questions that people have? Were you able to find the solutions that we needed as a public or as a society who are experiencing near-death or alien contact or poltergeist activity?
Short answer is no. And again, let me go back to UFOs, myth, conspiracy, and reality. The last paragraph, not only was it more complex than we could imagine, I also note in there that I don't think we're at the point of even asking the right questions, much less trying to get simplified answers. The next question is going to be, what are the right questions? And the answer to that is, I don't know. But I think it would take a lot of studying and, again, doing the macro pattern analysis from which we can derive the direction in which the research should go.
Were we any closer to finding out the puzzle piece, or to putting this puzzle together, though? Did we learn more than what we had before just from listening to people's personal experiences and studying those?
Short answer is no. Again, you get back to this precognitive sentient phenomena. There was something, super consciousness or spirit world or whatever, that was totally in control. It was allowing us access to observations of some incidents. Again, we're back to, we're not even at the juncture of asking or knowing what the right questions are to ask. We're it's kind of like steering a waterfall or a hurricane or something like that. It's just, it's an avalanche. It has various aspects to it. And again, if you're a skier and you have an avalanche, the only thing you can do is try to skier and you're trying to save your life. You don't go in and say, where the hell did all this snow come from, or how did it, start coming down the cliff or whatever. And I think that's where we are in the consciousness thing. It's kind of interesting. These various pieces appear. But again, what is lacking is getting best and brightest scientists to even be allowed to search these areas. That was what I think is needed. By the way, I will throw in, I fully understand why public in general would be interested in their little piece of the puzzle. Makes perfect sense from that perspective, but I don't think it's going to get us to this broader understanding. And one of the things we may want to talk to is the concept of spirit world, because that transcends much of the experiences that I've had around the world.
I have a question coming in from Twitter for you, Dr. Alexander. This is from a fellow Canadian, Muji Boy. He's saying, do you believe there is something otherworldly happening on the ranch, or is it more psychological in nature?
I'm sorry, but you're fading dramatically. I hope that's not my phone. But go ahead.
All right.
Try it again.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, so this question is from one of our listeners on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. Muji Boy is asking, do you believe, Dr. Alexander, there is something otherworldly happening on the ranch, or is it more psychological in nature?
It ain't psychological. It is far broader, and forget the ranch. The ranch is just one tiny geographic area and a global issue.
And on that note, Dr. Alexander, I'm going to get you to hold on here for a couple of minutes because we are going to hop out for our final break of the night on Spaced Out Radio. Dr. John B. Alexander is our guest tonight. His book, where you can pick up at any major bookstore or online, is called Reality Denied. First-hand experiences with things that can't happen, but did. Intriguing title nonetheless. The foreword by Uri Geller. I highly suggest you check out this book. His website, johnbalexander.com. And we're going to get more into disclosure, UFOs, the U.S. government. What does this all mean for the public? We got a real expert on the phone tonight. We want to get as many questions as we can, as he is going to go for the final hour of the show tonight. Dr. John B. Alexander with us. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back with more right after this.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
There's stories, then there's the truth. Do any of us really trust the news anymore? This is Jamie Sexton, owner of Rebel Planet News. The third Thursday of every month, I appear on SpacedOutRadio.com to bring you the truth you deserve, without mainstream media lies or alternative media fear-mongering. We'll get to the heart of the story and deliver the truth you are seeking. So come join us here for the Rebel Planet at SpacedOutRadio.com.
We are lighting the void on Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio. Hey, this is Joe Roop, and I'm hanging out in SOR headquarters every Saturday night, bringing you the latest news when it comes to the weird and strange. Bigfoot, occult, UFOs, ghosts, and everything in between, I got you covered. You can tune in to SpacedOutRadio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Come travel into the void with us on Spaced Out Saturdays.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on SpacedOutRadio.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4 Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
There's a lot of strange going on in this world, and we can help you find out what's going on with you. Paranormal, cryptids, UFOs in the sky, aliens in your bedroom tickling your toes. We have the investigators you need to find out the answers you deserve. All you have to do is head to spacedoutradio.com. Your information is 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report. It's free, and we're here to help.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, we step into the paranormal. We're going to head to Kansas. We're going to talk to Lance Eberhardt and the hauntings his family has had around their ranch around Kansas City. I hope you join us at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We say hello to everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of the Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on the Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Teleesthesia is your password. Be sure to use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel, real simple to find our archives. We're at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. We are also on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where you can read up on the encounter online for all your strange and weird news. You can also watch some great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, and so much more at spacedoutradio.com. For the final time tonight, we introduce our guest, Dr. John B. Alexander. He is the author of Reality Denied, First-Hand Experiences with Things That Can't Happen But Did. He also worked with Robert Bigelow at the Skinwalker Ranch, and Dr. Alexander's website is johnbalexander.com. Dr. Alexander, welcome back to the show. Right before the break, you were answering a question about the psychological aspect of a lot of the happenings, and you wanted to continue that from a question from Muji Boy from Twitter.
Yeah, I think the answer is quite simple. A lot of people want to say, oh, it's just imagination or imaginal. Remember the story that we gave about the wolf that got shot, about the calf that was exsanguinated and eviscerated. A host of these others have physical attributes. So, kind of by definition, this is not a psychological aberration. You might say that, question that when you get into interaction with sentient beings or notions and all that. But many of these phenomena, I'm sure if we're going to go in the UFO area, these are very physical.
Are we talking physical as in the point of the entity is physical, or their abilities to harm physical beings like cows or humans?
I can't say any of those are accurate. What I can say is there are physical events that occur that defy explanation. And so it's not just somebody, you're not relying on personal observation or did somebody think something. There are certainly those aspects to it. But across the board, these are incidents that are occurring in what we call consensus reality, the reality that we agree upon is what we call the real world, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Once again, very hard for a lot of people to understand because we look at things and try and break things down so much with simplicity that I don't think the real public who is having these experiences could really comprehend what you are trying to tell them or the research is trying to tell them. Does that frustrate you at times that the public just isn't open-minded enough to figure out what's been studied and how much there is still to go?
Frustrated, no. I am mystified at times, again, by the complexity of the incidents. I totally understand why any individual who has had a mystical experience of, kind of any sort, visitations, precognition, psychokinetic activity around them, apparitions, take your pick. If that happens to an individual who is not steeped in the mythology and the background and the scientific literature of the area, I fully understand why that would become a paramount interest to them. My admonition, again from the scientific perspective, is that we need to back off and look at these things through a much broader prism.
Mm-hmm. But how can the general public do that, sir, with all due respect to your research?
I don't know that they can. I don't know that they can. And again, we're talking the difference between individuals many of whom have had experiences, maybe multiple ones, versus what I'm addressing is the need for the scientific community to become involved in looking at these and try to find the underlying aspects. The fundamental mistake, in my view, in looking at not just phenomena, but everything, is that in the West, we come from a materialistic worldview. That, we have spent, use the Large Hadron Collider as an example, spent $17 billion on that, and out of which we find that they have the Higgs boson, which they talked about being the God particle, i.e. you cut things into smaller and smaller parts, and at some point you get to some fundamental it that defines things and everything is built from. But the problem was, even after you found that, along came pentaquarks. Others. The issue of belief systems, I think, is center to the issue. We in the West came from the predominantly educational system that supports the materialistic view. There must be, physical answers to everything. If I, talk about my experiences around the world, I can tell you most of the world has a different worldview, and that interactions with a spirit world or worlds are part of the norm. I often use Brazil as an example. I've done a lot of work down there, most of it in what you'd call straight world. I've been invited in at very, very high levels. And what's interesting is I deal with people who were senior military officers, who were ministers, meaning governmental ministerial level and that, extremely well educated, again in academic institutions that generally follow, this materialistic view, and yet they incorporate a view of the spirit world and can integrate those things. Again, West United States and Europe in general cannot integrate. They ask, is it either or? And yet, there are examples of that. But again, throughout the world, I deal with shamans in various places, and they integrate the real world and the spirit world as if it were a continuum. In the West, we view, if you even accept the possibility of a spirit world, that is something that is separate and distinct from the physical world as we know it. And again, we're back to really, really complex. But I think your listeners, particularly ones in, Europe and the United States, all come from a belief system that's predominantly materialistic.
Quick question from Kevin in the SOR chat room. He is asking, how accurate, Mr. Alexander, do you feel the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats was?
That is a joke, right?
Well, you know what? Sometimes our audience wants to know the most intriguing questions.
If you go to my website, near the back, I actually have a kind of a detailed analysis. My point is, if you get the book, it came from a book by the same name, and who we are in the book is clear and unmistakable. They use the real names. And what I usually say is Ronson, as the author, took, say, 5% truth, wrote 100%, and then they made the movie. So that's why I have to laugh when they say, how accurate is it? I will say goats did die, but none of them died from being stared at.
Mm-hmm. I want to switch gears here, Dr. Alexander, and get into something that is close to the hearts of a lot of people right now in this field, and that goes back to the New York Times article in early December stating that disclosure is here and that the United States government has been investigating, at least through 2007 and 2012, investigating and investing in UFO research and phenomena. Were you surprised to see this come out, or did you know or expect that it was coming out?
First of all, I do not agree that the issue was disclosure. As I've said to everybody who will listen, as far as disclosure or the reality of UFOs, this goes back to at least 1947. And contrary to popular belief, the government has never said UFOs are not real. That's a myth that has grown up, and I've seen that in many, many articles. The problem from a UFO community standpoint is they refuse to take yes for an answer. They keep saying, when is it going to be disclosed? They have told you time and time and time again, up to and including presidents. I have in my briefings, I've got a list of senior leaders around the world, all of whom have said this is real. And the response from the UFO community is, when are you going to tell us it's real? So it is. I also think I have been referring people recently to Chapter 5 of UFOs, Myths, Conspiracies, and Realities. And that chapter deals with how the government works. I know you're Canadian. I got your former Minister of Defense can drive me to distraction. I totally disagree with his analysis on it, Paul Hellyer, of course. But most Americans do not have the foggiest idea of how the government really works. And my point here is, I say the government was studying this. Now, what happened is you had a tiny element of people who were fortunate to get funded and were able to do a bit of research. Now, I point out, I did the same thing 30 years ago. And hence, by the way, the UFO book really discusses this in some detail, where Lou was more successful than I was as he got funded. But I had put together a group that was comprised of members of every service, from the intelligence community, and from senior aerospace scientists, looking exactly at the same issues. I want to point out that the things that they describe as happening, if you go to the Nimitz affair, which I'm sure you're familiar with, that was the focal point of that particular research. The things that were observed have been actually noted for at least 70 years, again, if not millennia. But, flying objects with those characteristics, i.e., accelerating at great speeds, making right-angle turns with G-forces that would kill any living system as we know it, visible, disappear in the water, I don't care what your characteristics are, all of those have been observed. The difference now is we got some better sensors. So we had a bit of data, but I don't think we're one step closer to solutions.
What I've noticed from this entire recent disclosure, and I agree with you that the government has never really denied it. They've never just, at certain points, really said it's out there.
Let me back up. You've got a key issue. What do you mean by the government?
Well, if I look at it on a Canadian side, I would say my Prime Minister on down.
What do you mean on down? So if somebody, someplace in the entire establishment happens to look at UFOs or have individual interest in something, does that mean the Canadian government is involved in it?
Well, the Canadian...
I'm being a bit harsh here, but I understand.
Right.
But one of the things I have talked about extensively is the difference between individual interest in various areas and institutional responsibility. One of the key things that I found in the study that I ran 30 years ago was nobody's in charge. Lots of people were interested. American government has, millions of people. If you extrapolate that to contractors and all that, many millions of people. We know that about 10% between 7 and 10% of the adult population has seen something that they believe to be a UFO. That is true in, the government organizations as well, particularly the military. So do you have individuals who are interested in these things? That can be yes. That does not, therefore, infer that the government, as an institution, has interest in these areas. I might mention that something that came up. For example, Lou, who had a personal experience with Mattis, and actually, our Secretary of Defense. When this issue broke, our Secretary of Defense had warning of, like a couple of hours before the article broke, and had no idea that this had ever gone on. So you got little pockets. I mentioned that I, worked in the Pentagon once upon a time. I said I used to run around looking for this guy, Pentagon, because the Pentagon says this and the Pentagon says that. And my point is the Pentagon doesn't say anything. It's a big stone building, which is occupied by around 30,000 individuals who have a wide variety of belief systems and interests. So your individuals, and some of them speak from an institutional perspective, but not everything that, any one of those 30,000 people might believe, think, or study can be attributed to governmental interest or responsibility.
If I can just back up on what you just said momentarily about the Secretary of Defense of the United States finding out 2 hours before the New York Times article was going to come out, when you said that he didn't know about it, do you mean the article or UFOs in general? He wasn't briefed on it.
He did not know that the study had ever occurred. I did the numbers on this. When it was active, it was 0.01% of the DOD budget, i.e. minuscule. And there are dozens of projects they own at the secretary level. There's no way in hell you could know about everything that's going on at this granularity. So it should be no surprise. Again, this is the difference between institutional interest, i.e. somebody like the Secretary of Defense said, I want you to go study this sort of thing, versus an individual, which this was, who was interested, and I was. Like I said, I did the same thing, putting the pieces together. Nobody told me to do it. In fact, I had held several meetings before I went. My boss happened to be a three-star general, and I went in to see him, and I said, sir, there's something I think you ought to know, just in case it leaked. I didn't want them to hear it first in the Washington Post. But again, these things start from the bottom up. That does not infer that, again, there was institutional interest in what I was doing, nor in this project. This is something again, he was fortunate in being able to get somebody to fund it. And I thought that was a pretty good lick.
Does the president, say someone who is as quirky as Donald Trump, buy into the whole UFO phenomena when he is, introduced to what is known when he takes president?
Why would he be introduced?
Are presidents not introduced to the UFO phenomena?
Nobody cares. This is so far below the level of caring for most people, unless they have individual interest or responsibility. You've got to remember, Reagan, on the other hand, had a couple of personal experiences. Again, that did not translate into, institutional responsibility or to go out and study these things. Jimmy Carter, who actually had reported seeing a UFO, when he got in office, sent a memo out to the, I forget which particular office, I think it was OSTP, the scientific office, or Office of Scientific Policy, and said, I want to know about this. And they basically told him to pack sand, a colloquialism for, we ain't going to be bothered, even though the president asked.
So this is, just on a civil level, because, many of us don't know. This is way above even the president's top clearance. And
nobody, they don't care. The world is burning. To try to convince somebody that this is a front burner issue just is a non-starter. I understand from a civilian perspective that, they don't understand this, but this again gets back to the need to understand how the government works, what the complexities are. Of the things that are biting the president, today, tomorrow, the next day, UFOs just don't make the cut.
But if it affects mankind, where, let's say, an alien species wants to come down and introduce themselves to us publicly, would that not be the responsibility of the United States president to take the first step in that introduction?
You have stepped into my trap, I think. No, one of the things I point out is, I know the movies always have them coming to the White House and all that, and I point out, we are 4% of the population of the world, a tiny portion of the global matter. Why is it, except through egocentrism, that we think that ET, who has come here a gazillion times, is going to pick the White House as the place to land? It's great fodder for Hollywood, but it just, that is one of the pieces that defies logic.
But understand, that's what the public wants, because that's what they understand, and they're only being told this story in snippets and from what Hollywood says in their make-believe movies.
But remember, Hollywood is located in the U.S., and unfortunately, again, terribly egocentric, and unfortunately, we don't play well with others, and particularly with what you mentioned, the current administration having abdicated our international responsibilities. I can understand why Hollywood would do that. It's very popular, but again, it defies common sense, and when you get down to it.
So if no one cares, and I'm going to use your words here if I'm understanding it right, why come out with the video? Why start the To the Stars campaign that Tom DeLonge and Lewis...
Very, very different. Those are very different issues. Why DeLonge? That's a case where an individual decided to put concerted effort into answering these questions. Again, totally civilian effort, so that makes sense. He has the money and the resources to pursue it. So did. Again, these are interesting phenomena. I don't think they rise to the level of where the government is necessarily or should be involved. In fact, I argue against the secrecy issue. I think it has been a tremendous burden for a lot of issues or reasons. And also, there's no way in hell that we are going to be able to solve this issue at a governmental level. The only thing that government, I think, brings to the table today is that we got some better sensors than are available in the civilian sector. But remember, these incidents happen to civilians and military and kind of everybody alike. So there's no reason to think that it's that we ought to be keeping it. This gets back to the mantra issue of why we need a much broader approach to solve these problems. I think we need to engage rather than keeping it secret, and I think we ought to be engaging the civilian sector across the board and saying, here's what we know. Now, to be fair, one of the key issues in classification has to do with what we call sources and methods, and the point there being that what we probably do not want to disclose is just how good the sensors really are. You don't want to. There's a lot of mythology. Just watched a movie last night that's coming out shortly, Commuter, and in it the police have these magic look-through wall capabilities that I think a lot of people think or might wish occur. The reality is they don't exist. And so you have people responding to, again, things that are not terribly realistic as to what these institutions actually know or would care about.
I understand that exact point of what you're saying here. But the people who are having those experiences, whether it's contact, whether it's sightings in the skies, or they've been abducted, or there's people going as far as saying about, some sort of government infiltration, if we could use that word, with MK Ultra and programs like that, there's a lot of people who think that their entire life is on the line because it's something that they never thought would occur in their life. But this experience has happened and hasn't changed their entire direction. So how do you suggest people deal with those situations?
Well, what I usually respond a bit unkindly, I understand, is, run, don't walk, and seek competent psychiatric assistance, because some of these aren't. I understand that some of these events, or I believe, are not all psychiatric in nature. But the point is, so what? Why is it the government's responsibility to answer, complex issues about what's happened in one's life? A lot of these have to do with validation of belief system. Again, I get back to the complexity of the issues involved. One of the things that I have looked at is, where do we go? We mentioned before Hadron Collider, spending $17 billion on that. Why is it that we don't spend, some kind of money like that looking at the issues of continuation of consciousness beyond bodily death? Because that is something that is going to affect 100% of the population at some point. And yet we have no expectation, maybe rightfully so, that the government should be spending resources on that. We allocate those to, other agencies, i.e. churches and things of that nature. So why do we have the expectation that the government, this is an appropriate area for the government to be spending resources. I do point out frequently that they say, well, I'll tell you, I took some hits when this article came out, and some of the people who have had exposure to entities, etc., said, why is this a threat that, Lou in his study said, we're studying threats. And my point was, because he worked for the Department of Defense. If you're going to expend resources for the Department of Defense, it has to be in some way related to a defense or a national security issue. So that was the practical way to get money in, and is exactly the approach that I used 30 years ago to couch it in those terms. There is no, in the United States government, I suspect in the Canadian government, there is no Department of Good Ideas or things we ought to look at. Everything goes to, from an institutional perspective, have responsibilities as shepherds of public resources. You ought to be using those or husbanding them along the lines of what your institutional responsibilities are. And I understand that the UFO community, whatever that is, thinks that this is the hottest, the front burner items. I keep hearing it will change everything. If you understood that ET was here, my response to that is no, it won't. Because confirmation of what you already believe is not the game changer. It doesn't change everything. So again, we get back to what is it that these institutions ought to be doing, and they would be criticized, and rightly so, and this is exactly what happened to that program. Once it rose to the level where it could be seen, people said that's a misapplication of resources. Now, UFO community would not agree with that. I understand that. But I think 90% of the population would.
This leads to Eric in the chat room's question. If you were in charge then, how would you educate people about the UFO phenomena?
That is an intriguing question. And actually, if you look at To the Stars, that is one of the major areas that they are trying to engage, and specifically to do it through entertainment media, and to what Tom DeLonge was concerned about was that, and in fact true, if you look at UFO researchers, most of us are dinosaurs. I go to the meetings, and believe me, the Society for Scientific Exploration will be hosting this meeting. Well, I'm hosting it here in Las Vegas in June, and we have been trying for decades to get young folks interested, and that's an area that Tom is using his celebrity because he is recognized by a lot of younger folks and to get them actively involved. I would divide it into a couple of things. One's providing information, accurate information, and another area would be considered serious research into a number of these areas. I would spend a lot more money, but I don't know that it would be federal money, Canadian or American, as to how you can justify the application of finite resources in these areas.
Do you think the mainstream public overall is ready to learn the truth, though, about the UFO phenomenon that we have been visited for centuries and probably millennia? Because the way society is today, especially as you pointed out here in North America, that there are so much more interesting things to talk about rather than UFOs that it's really a forgotten and almost still a taboo subject to even get into.
Well, the Kardashians would probably get a bigger interest level. I have no idea why. I think our interest in celebrity and other things has distracted, much to the detriment of society. And you look at the issues with social media and spreading gossip and things. Again, you get back to, I'm not sure I agree with the statement that we have been visited per se. Again, that's because I come down against the extraterrestrial hypothesis. I do think that there are interactions between, again, humans and sentient non-humans. Does that mean visitation? Again, we're back to terribly complex issues. I mentioned I'm much more interested now in issues of, spirit worlds or things that are obviously kind of either co-located or somehow interacting with consensus reality as we know it. Your term visited tends to imply, again, ETH, that somebody from out there came here. And I don't think, I'm not ready to make that leap yet. I do think the interactions occur and that people have been interacted with. Not sure that means that it's ET.
One of the issues that has come up on this show about disclosure is, we'll take two names. We'll take Dr. Stephen Greer, who 20-some years ago held the UFO Congress in Washington State, where disclosure apparently happened at the Media Club, and then now you have Tom DeLonge. Now, back then, Greer came out, and he's still on the point that his government sources says extraterrestrials are here, they're sentient beings, and we need to start making peace with them and learning from them, whereas DeLonge is taking everything on a threat, even going as far as when he was interviewed on Joe Rogan saying we need to squash these aliens from coming down here, or any potential aliens from coming down here, and maybe we should look at putting nuclear weapons into space. Two sources, or two different sources.
Both equally wrong. The problem with Greer is he puts out lots of stuff. Everyone ends up with send him money. If ET is here, as I have pointed out repeatedly, it ain't for our benefit. If you look at the interactions that occurred and the issues that are happening around the world, i.e., poverty and agriculture and climate change and wars, ET just hasn't helped a whole lot in any of these areas. Doing an interview today, and I point out Tom Friedman's book called The World is Flat, Hot, and Crowded. And my point there is, if we sent out the ET, he didn't answer the phone, and we are the ones who would better get busy to, sort out this mess. Do not think that some mystical being is going to swoop in with all of the answers. And again, if these interactions have been going on for a long time, but they certainly haven't changed the course of societal development. Greer, unfortunately, with his thing, stopped my efforts for congressional hearings, which were en route to happening. I actually wrote the promulgating documents on that, and if you want to see them, again, in the book UFOs, I included them there. And what happened was he came in with the nonsense, and whooping and hollering and screaming at the evil government for covering up things and all that, and the congressional support that we said, we're out of here. We are not going to have our names attached to this. And you got to, one of the things to understand, and this is where the, quote, UFO community breaks with the rest of certainly our country, and I'm guessing theirs. This is not a voting issue. This is not something of vital interest to the vast majority of the population. 70% of the people believe it's real, but most of them, it's a ho-hum item. Yeah, they'll go watch movies or television programs and things of that nature. But when you put this up against jobs, health care, environment, etc., does not make the cut. From a political perspective, well, I'll give you an example. When we were going to have the hearings, I was talking to the congressman, and I said, can you take a 20-point hit in the polls? And at that time, he could. My point there is that this is a totally toxic position from a political perspective. And I use my friend, Senator Claiborne Pell, has since died, but the point was that he once stopped by a MUFON meeting that was in the Washington area. The Washington Post got on that, and it literally followed him to his obituary, and not a good thing.
So why are so many experiencers fearing things or people like the Men in Black? Are you buying into those types of stories? Are you saying they are not real?
We didn't discuss the topic.
Do you know about Men in Black?
Whether it's real or not, I don't know. There's certainly a lot of things. I don't believe that they're government agents, if that's the question. The whole MyLab thing, I'm going to bring that up, I think it's just total nonsense, and demonstrably so, but, it is one. I'll give an example. I was at a conference once on the West Coast, and some woman came up whom I've never seen before, have no idea who she is, and screaming about being investigated, and said, "I saw you on the UFO." I'll tell you, I wasn't there, but people get definitely emotionally involved in these topics. We do know that I'm writing an article that'll come out now, but the Bigelow, when you hit an emotional topic like that, suffers a break from the cerebral cortex, meaning you physically lose the ability to think rationally.
I mean, that's pretty heavy for someone to accuse anyone, and I'll use you as an example because you just brought it up, of saying that I was going through this whole MyLab experiment. I mean, that sounds like Dorothy right out of The Wizard of Oz, and you were there, and you were there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've never experienced that. I don't know if it actually happens, but on the flip side, how does someone put your face into a UFO if you've never been on one?
I have no idea. I just use that as an example because it really happened. But it also points out that when you get into these areas, you literally lose the ability to think rationally. I mean, that's a physical thing.
So what you're saying is a lot of people who are having these experiences have worked themselves up so much about it that they're looking at the entire happenstance irrationally.
Oh, yes. No, some of these things, I have heard some tales from very credible people that are very, very remarkable. So I'm not saying the events don't happen. I am saying that the values, if you like in MyLab, the military abductions, if you will, and we looked at that when a topic first came out, and you say, well, how many people are involved? Now, the guesstimate number of people who claim to have been abducted varies. Let's conveniently put it on 1 million or so, or even 100,000, and yet they say, part of the scenario is they've been abducted throughout their life, that they're monitored constantly, that they're picked up periodically and examined, tossed back. Now, you want to attribute that usually to the U.S. government. I say, okay, well, how do you do that? You got to remember that, they usually now say satellites. They say, you got to remember these incidents were reported long before the constellations were up. So if you start saying, what does it take to monitor this number of people? By the way, to do a 24/7, you need at least 5 for every one, and that's just to do the observation. That doesn't count, research, observation, all that. So you start extrapolating that, and you get to forces that are bigger than the entire Department of Defense. So obviously, that's just not true. And you find that, again, you got a few people, individuals who are personally interested, but to extrapolate this to institutional responsibility and involvement, it's just, again, demonstrably false. But even so, it does pick up a lot of steam, particularly in the whole conspiracy theory realm.
Do you believe then, and I'm wearing a tinfoil hat here, not really, but I can put one on, it is behind me, that the United States has any sort of alien technology or material?
No.
Because in that...
I do know that people talk about it. My position on Roswell is that the event happened, but it was ours. And I have met with one, Jesse Marcel Jr., and there was another one who we think had access to the material at the time. They were put in front of a series of materials and said, "Do you see that?" Both of them said, "This is it," and they pointed at metallized mylar, and that material did exist 1947, and it had all of the properties that were described by Jesse Sr. and others who claim to be involved. Material deformation, flame resistant, etc., etc. That stuff was real then, so I don't think it is. I've seen with some interest, some of these materials that they claim the research has been done on. I have not seen the actual research on it. But what I can say, I think unequivocally, is nothing like reverse engineering. We have been at war since 2001 consistently. Usually during periods of conflict, you're going to see advances in technology. You have seen that in areas of prosthetics and some sensor systems to find IEDs. The biggest advance you've seen in aviation is the F-35, and that certainly does not have any, dramatically advanced propulsion capability or any of those things. So you just, we've been in conflict. The latest numbers I saw, I thought it was around 3 trillion. I saw some folks that attributed the war on terror to now be at $8 trillion, or it will eventually get there. And yet, no big leaps in technology, which lends me to believe, nope, you don't have, or have not, certainly, if you had access to it, you have not been able to make any advances.
There's a lot of people who believe, though, if you go by what Ben Rich said in 1992, that we're 50 to 80 years ahead in any technology than what we are showing today. Would that be a fair statement from Lockheed Skunk Works, former president?
No. You got to remember, most of that's, I believe, nonsense personally. I knew Ben Rich. We met and talked about these topics on several occasions. He had a shopping list. And I'm very familiar with the oft-quoted statement about taking E.T. home. I don't believe that. What I do know, my last job in the military was Director of Advanced System Concept for the Army Laboratory Command, i.e. working with very far advanced, we call basic science. The lag time between breadboard, brass board type thing till you see it operational is about 15 to 20 years. We have had that during this current conflict. You do not see any big leaps.
Getting back to what I asked you about alien technology, if the U.S. government has it, in the New York Times article, Bob Bigelow was quoted as saying, or people were saying in that article, that Bob Bigelow at Bigelow Aerospace in Las Vegas does have some sort of extraterrestrial type material in that building that they are studying.
That's a big leap. I think it's safe to say they have some unusual material. To, again, define it as alien, I think, unless they know something I don't. I mean, I have not seen it. I saw the same articles. I think my guess is that people are making some pretty big leaps. And again, it has not been transitioned to anything useful, obviously.
We're winding down on time here. We only have about 2.5 minutes left with you tonight, and I want to, in advance, say my great appreciation for you coming on this show and giving us an opportunity to ask you some pointed questions, and thank you for answering very candidly on both the Skinwalker Ranch and on disclosure. We really appreciate that.
Well, I should mention, you've given out the website. My email address is on there, and I really answer questions.
Do you enjoy talking to the public about these subjects, considering we are so, not understanding of these topics?
Short answer is yes. And I think it's important because one of the biggest advantages to me is I keep finding more and more amazing cases that come in. Some I might have thought originally, if you look at the second chapter of Reality Denied, this whole incident with Chris Bledsoe, my UFO sighting there, I mean, that's one that just defied credibility until it happened to me. And so I enjoy the interaction and certainly get onto some pretty remarkable experiences that would not otherwise be exposed to.
And until then, for most people, the mystery continues. And I think that... I'm sorry, sir?
As I'm just going to... When I sign books, I often put, welcome to the exploration eternal.
Do you ever see a day when we will get the full answer to absolutely everything that is going on, from alien life in outer space to what happens after we die?
Well, what we're hoping is that after you die, you do get to experience that. That opens up an area I couldn't begin to answer in the length of time. As far as life in outer space, I think that's an absolute certainty, and that's just based purely on mathematics and the probabilities based on the number of planets that we know exist out there, and planets that are potentially habitable.
Dr. John Alexander, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Would you do me a favor and just tell people your website, your books, where they can get in touch with you once again?
The easiest way is just to Google my name, John B. Alexander. Happens to be the same for the thing. And the most recent book is Reality Denied, my first-hand experiences with things that can't happen but did. It's quite a challenge to science and our conventional scientific community.
We really appreciate you taking the time. Doc, if you can hold on for a moment, I'm just going to be wrapping up this show. I want to say thank you to Dr. John Alexander coming on for hours 2 and 3, and to Eric who called in during open lines in hour number 1. Tomorrow night on the program, Lance Eberhard is going to be here. We're going over to his haunted ranch to find out the weird and strange happenings around there. He's been on TV a couple of times on those ghost shows. We're going to find out firsthand tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. I want to say a big thank you once again to John Alexander, Dr. John Alexander. Go to johnbalexander.com where you can find his book, Reality Denied, First-Hand Experiences with Things That Can't Happen But Did. Remember what he said. Check out Chapter 5. That is the most important one in that entire book. Want to say thank you to everyone who has donated so far to our GoFundMe account, GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. We're trying to build a brand new studio here. With your help, we could get it done very, very quick. GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. Very much appreciate everybody listening at home, listening in their cars, at work, following us on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio, on Periscope. For the first time tonight, I hope it went well. In Spreaker and the Old Guard in the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook. Thank you for doing everything you do, being a part of this show, because together, my friends, we own the night. I'll talk to you in 21 hours from now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a good night. Bye-bye.